Hello and welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp. I'm your host, Andrew Moses. With me today, I have a very, very special guest, Melanie Newman, Baltimore Orioles and MASN TV broadcaster. Welcome to the show, Melanie.
Thank you. I'm glad we finally got to connect.
I am glad we finally get to do this, Melanie. I've been looking forward to this because, as you know, this show is called Everybody Pulls the Tarp, and it's a mantra that I've lived by since I started my career as a front office intern in minor league baseball. And I learned on my first day that everybody pulls the tarp, and I did a lot of things besides pulling the tarp as well. And I want to get into your entire career in the minor leagues, your recent call up to the big leagues with the Orioles, and everything you have going on. But where I want to start, Melanie, is all the way back at the beginning. When did you first realize that you had an interest in broadcasting?
Well, that's a little unorthodox compared to a lot of broadcasters that say, I grew up watching it and I was a kid and I knew this is what I wanted to do. We unearthed some tapes. I don't know if you remember like the Talk Girl that was so popularized back.
Oh, yeah.
But we unearthed some from when I had one at the age of probably 4 or 5. And I was giving play-by-play of my family, but that's me like hiding behind the staircase and doing stuff that still allowed me to be an introvert. Because apart from that, I spent most of my life thinking I would be a teacher or a veterinarian. And it wasn't really until I started developing journalism skills in high school and then in college was persuaded to switch from print to broadcast that I, was just dutiful and said, okay, you're the professionals here. I'll trust you. I'll give it a shot. And with every year after that, I felt more invested and more obsessed with developing the craft and just how the broadcast industry works. So by the time it was my sophomore year back in 2010 was when I had my first live reporting gig and decided, I don't even want to do studio work, the pre-recorded stuff, none of that. Like, let's go in, let's do sidelines. And then that led to an opportunity in the booth. And, again, just saying yes to that and realizing that, I had a place in both spaces. And I've been very lucky that I've found a way to have both of those ever since.
So when you discovered that what you really wanted to do was be in the booth and on the sidelines, what was it that was most intriguing to you?
Honestly, I love both equally. I think they both have their challenges, and I'm really fortunate that from some type of miracle, I've been brought onto a team that saw that and wants to keep both. But they're just so unique in themselves. But I think a lot of people, if you're in one or the other, you misunderstand the other, because I certainly did. With sidelines, you have to get the respect and the trust of these people to tell their stories and to tell them with justice. And sometimes you're coming in off of a flight, you have, a couple hours before these games, and you're trying to get coaches to not, be on edge when you're around their kids and the families to understand what you're doing and that you have their best interest in heart. I'm not trying to dig up anything scandalous here. I want to talk about you guys. So that was always a really unique situation to me, was the challenge of getting in there and doing more than just what, articles and other news channels have already regurgitated about the subject you're covering. As far as being in the booth is concerned, you're people's eyes. I'm lucky that I'm in the radio side, but that's that much more of a responsibility, because you can't turn it down and watch the TV feed for a little bit and still get it. For some people, they're driving in their car. That's the only way that they have to know what's going on is your words. So if you miss a play or you botch something, you're modifying how they've perceived the game, how they're going to tell their friends how the game has gone. And again, going back to the family thing, for some of these athletes, that's their family's connection to them, is listening to your voice and giving them that sense of, you've poured your whole life into seeing your son get here. This is what he's doing with it. So they're both a daily habit of building and improving upon, but it's just awesome.
So you talk about the daily habit of building and improving upon. Baseball's unique as compared to other sports because it's every day, at least typically. Right now we could all use some baseball, but it's typically every day. Talk about the preparation. The things that people don't see, right? They listen and they hear a broadcast, but they don't see all the work that goes in on that flight that you're talking about, or that goes in pregame. Talk about the preparation for a little bit.
So I will say the preparation right now is a total 180 from what I've been acclimated to. And I love that, pull the tarp, you have to wear a bunch of hats. That definitely goes the same for the broadcaster, because a lot of teams understand the broadcaster doesn't bring in, revenue to the team on their own. So you're having to contribute to sales, running social media, being out on the field, wearing all these different hats. So in the previous years, and it varies with every minor league team because it also depends on the type of staff that they have. But for example, this last season for me, my preparation came while I was building the next day's game notes, because that's the only time that I had to prepare. So making sure that I repeated stuff back out loud as I put in anecdotes and updated the stat pages, and okay, this guy broke his streak. This guy's building a streak on this day, back in 2002, this is what happened. And taking 15 minutes before and then reading the opponent's game notes. That was almost it. And so it was that much more crucial to really be with the team and ingrain yourself and let these guys know, like, hey, I'm grinding out with you right now. Because then, in batting practice, they would come up and give stories and just share and kind of chit chat. No, this is what I'm working on, because it just became a normal conversation. And so you get to pull that into your broadcast as well, which is what I think gives it a little flavor. And it's not just this cut and dry, here's the game.
Sorry.
Oh,
so
no, go ahead.
In those settings, you're really able to build relationships with the players then.
Oh, 100%. And that was always something, though, that I had wanted to focus on. And I understand it, too, because it can be intimidating. You've gone through your whole baseball career and it's been all the guys. And it's not like they have anything against it. But a female does walk in the room and it's, they're 19 years old. You're like, whoa, okay, this is a little intimidating. So making sure that I had work done by the time they started batting practice was MO number one. Everything had to be printed, put up, and ready to go so that I could take that hour of time and just be down there, be behind the turtle, be with the coaches, talk to the guys as they're coming in and out. That was where, you get those moments, because we have the bus rides together, but everybody's usually trying to sleep or ignore the fact that they're on a bus at that point. So you don't really want to bother them then. And that's the cool thing now, being with a big league club and having the resources that we have, is there's not only a wealth of material that I don't have to type up and put together, but there's so much more time to actually give it justice and to give a big league production and, to dig into all of the obscure little articles that have been written about these guys, but the stories maybe haven't been told yet. So I'm curious, because, we only had one game before spring training got shut down. So I didn't really get to utilize all of that. I still had all the nerves of that game, of it being the first game, but it's such a different setting. And I even remember in September of this year, I'd taken on a contract with Liberty University for their football program. We were still playing. So it was Friday night. Liberty's home opener was the very next day. It's 30 minutes from Salem, so it wasn't a big deal. But I thought, okay, you know what? We've got to call the game. You've always heard it. Let's hope for a quick game. And then I got to get out of here. I've got to go to bed. I'm getting up at 6 a.m.
Extra innings, right?
Yeah. I knew that I was going to get up at 6 and drive to campus and start preparing for the game then. There was no point in me trying to cross wires and prepare for a football game in the middle of a baseball day and get everything done at the same time. And sometimes you have to do that. As much as it kills you, you have to just one day at a time and get through what's most important, and that's it. Well, what happened, we went into extra innings. We went into a rain delay. And they finally suspended it for the next day, like an hour and a half into the rain delay. So I didn't get to my apartment until 2 a.m. And I got lucky because since it had suspended, you couldn't update the game notes. You couldn't send out a game recap. There was a lot of work that had suddenly been taken off my plate until the next night. And I got up, I crammed, I met Hugh Freeze, right before the game started, instead of having gotten to be at the past couple weeks of practices. And he just rolled with it. And I said, look, the rest of the games, they'll only be better than what I've done today. And I got lucky, they loved the work that we put in that day, but you got to fly by the seat of your pants sometimes.
Sometimes. Let's go back a little bit to your time in Salem. So you've made a lot of history, and we're gonna talk about that. But you made history last year in 2019 with the Salem Red Sox. You and Susie Cool, the first all-female broadcast booth in professional baseball history. Talk a minute about that and how that came together and what that meant to you.
It was not planned. I actually was staring at spring training starting. I was already in Florida working in the statistics department for New York. Had no idea what I was going to do. Had family telling me, this might be time to reanalyze your career path. You might want to look at doing something different because I didn't have a job. I had been with the Frisco Rough Riders the previous year, and they had downsized their staff due to budget cuts. So my number 2 position with them got eliminated. And I really did, I was on my toes trying to think, where do I go from here? What do I do? But the answer was never, it's time to get out of this industry. And that was such a tooth and nail fight with some of my family that, just trust me on this. We've gotten through it this far. We'll see where it goes. And very last minute, Salem had made a hire, and then 3 weeks later had a flip. So this brand new hire went to another team, and the spot was suddenly open. And I knew, it'd be like gangbusters, because as soon as anybody else heard about it, there was going to be a rush to get to this job. I made phone calls as fast as my fingers could move and just said, look, I know where you're at. I know who you belong to. I grew up a fan of your parent club my entire life. I know where they're at right now in the system. There's nothing much for me to study. I'm in Florida. I can start doing spring training content for you guys if you want. And it just really came together after that. And it's funny because Susie had even reached out to me when I posted, the whole free agent status that we hate posting, and say, I wish you the best of luck. And then that flip happened about 48 hours later. But it was a great fit. That family was so supportive of me and really believed in the work that I could do. I wasn't hired because I was a female. I was hired because I was the best. And then it just so happened, having Susie join me on these, 20, 30 games, that precedent of having all females in the booth had never happened before, which was something I didn't even, it didn't occur to me. There's a lot of firsts that are under my name, and it doesn't occur to me until somebody reminds me or asks me about it. Just because for me, it's waking up and doing my job. I don't walk around in public like, oh, I'm a female going to the grocery store. Like, I'm a female doing this. Like, no, you live and you do your thing. So it was a riot, and I'll never forget the first game we had together was on the road in Potomac. And I don't know if you've seen that stadium, but it's very small. The press box is all one row. So you hear the visiting broadcaster, the home broadcaster, the PA announcer. We're all side by side in this itty bitty booth. And we walked out, and I've always wanted it to be about the guys. And so they're all ribbing me to death because we had all these different media outlets there. Nesson had flown down from Boston to cover it. And, they're all asking us about stuff. And I knew Potomac's manager for a while too, Trip Keister. And he was so great because he and Corey Wimberly had come together. They saved the lineup cards from that day. They had the team signed baseballs, and it's definitely like one of the weirdest days, especially in a minor league system, to have as a broadcaster, where for the most part, we fly under the radar, we get the work done and restart. But it was a viral moment that just kind of set up even more after that. It's like the dominoes keep falling.
It was, and I remember watching it unfold and seeing the news, and as a guy who has 2 daughters, I remember just thinking it shouldn't be news, but I was happy that the news was made, right? And I think that's how I thought about it. And so let's talk about some more history you make. So you get the call up to the Orioles, which I want to talk a lot about, and the role that you have with the Orioles and MASN, which is another multifaceted, multidimensional opportunity to showcase your talents. But you get that one game in Sarasota in spring training, and you make more history. It's the first time that a woman broadcasts in the Orioles booth in the entire franchise history. What was that like? Did it have as much fanfare and hoopla as that night in Potomac?
It was nerve-wracking. And we always joke, yes, minor league broadcasting is important, but some nights the only people who are listening are their family. So like you can slip up, you can do something, and you might hear about it, but you probably won't. Versus, even though it's a spring training game, it's the bigs, and you've got thousands of people paying attention. And especially being a female, it is unfortunate, like you said, like this should just be a normal thing, but it's that much more pressure to not mess up and to get it right and to be on top of it, which I'll take any day of the week. That's fine. But my nerves were definitely at 300 at that point. And so I thought, I'll get down to the park early, I'll have time to just read over all the notes and get ready. And I got lucky that one of my main broadcast partners when I'm in the booth is Jeff Arnold, and he and I had called several games together, both of us being in the Carolina League last year. So he's not only a friend, but he's a mentor. He's always had me under his wing, and just a really good person. So that did take a little bit of the edge off, knowing, you know, he knew where I was at and everything. But I woke up, I had no voice, not planned. I had an allergic reaction to something, so I was guzzling hot tea. I was doing everything I could to get my voice back, and stifling a cough, which the whispers of COVID-19 had started at that point, but it wasn't fully there yet. So even then I was trying to like mask it, because I didn't want people to be like, oh, you're coughing. Like, I don't want to touch you.
Right.
And then I get there and they're like, oh, hey, can we put you in a press junket? And, you know, I hadn't planned for that, but okay, you know, whatever you guys want. Yes. And then, oh, hey, we're going to have a guest in the booth during your first inning. And I'm like, okay, so I'll call the game. We'll do that. That's great. And just trying to get through it. And Jeff would pick up when I would go into a call. I had 2 home runs during my innings that I had called, but because my voice was so messed up, I couldn't elevate with the call because I could feel a horrible cough coming on. I abused my mute button that day. And so I'd have to kind of just, you know, squeak the call out, and then I'd hit mute, and he would pick right up where I had left off and kind of fill it in and give us a background. Then I'd take over again. So it's a day that I'll never forget. I'm really lucky that Birdland took me in. You know, it's been a really positive experience so far with the fan base, but I'm hoping we don't relive all of that first chaos when we get to go back and restart everything.
Yeah, hopefully you've got it under your, at least you got the one under your belt, and
Exactly.
and when things resume at Sarasota and then up in Camden Yards, it'll be like it's an old trick. So you talked about Jeff Arnold. You talked about the mentorship. You talked a little bit about the relationship with a partner in the booth, with Susie and with Jeff. You know, this show, like I talked about earlier, is really based on my philosophy that great teams are powered by individuals who contribute far beyond the boundaries of their job description. And what I know, and I'm sure you know, is that a broadcast comes together. People hear maybe, you know, one voice, maybe 2 voices, but there's an entire team that brings that together. What are some of the things for the audience here that people don't see before the broadcast starts and during the broadcast that maybe there's some unsung heroes, maybe there's some folks doing some things that people wouldn't think about? What's happening behind the scenes to bring it all together?
Oh my gosh, there's, and I feel bad because I can't even list all of their names, but especially for the Orioles, it's a village of people that bring everything together. We've got, you know, half a dozen people who work in PR, and they put together every different aspect. You know, there's one person who's specifically with the players, another with the community, another with spring training, and it just goes on from there. But they're the ones that are coming together and building those notes for us. You know, they're feeding us the stuff like, hey, it's Chris Davis's wife's birthday today, or, you know, one of them just had a kid. This is what's going on here. Like the knowledge that they have is just insane, but it's also showing the dedication to their craft. And then we've got, you know, the head of our digital media, and then we've got social media who's with the digital media, but it's still a different role. All of our producers, the executives that go into it, that give us, you know, hey, by the way, it wasn't planned, but we have a commercial that you need to read when you come back from the 4th inning, and making sure they write it on a note card for us and give it to us really quick. And so it all looks so seamless. But I mean, there's easily 30 plus people who are making all of the wheels of this continue to work. I definitely would not be anywhere right now if we didn't have their full support. And that's kind of awesome thing is the moment I flew up to Baltimore, just every single person we got to connect with, you know, it didn't feel judgy. It didn't feel like an interview where like I'm in the hot seat. It was, let's talk philosophy of broadcasting. Let's talk philosophy of baseball. Where are fans going right now? What do people want to see right now? And I just got to speak my mind. And it was this total inclusivity of, I love that. You know, what's the next step? How do we make that work? How do we bring that to life? So when you hear broadcasts, I almost so wish fans could get it. And I know that you get it too sometimes. Like, I'll watch a football game, I'll be like, that's a really clean score bug. Like, whoever the bug operator is, that's great. And like, no one else gets that that's a part of it, but it certainly is.
Yeah, it's the little things, right? That people just take for granted that these things happen. I think I mentioned to you before we got on camera last week, my guest on this show was the head groundskeeper for the Seattle Mariners for 20 years, and he was with Tacoma 20 years prior that. And we talked about all the things that go into making a baseball stadium, a Major League Baseball stadium, look like the cathedral that it is. And people think that, you know, you put some sod down, you water it a little bit, and it just happens. But as Bob shared, it's a 365 day a year job, and you're always thinking about the field. That was really his message, and it's the same in broadcasting. And so let's talk a little bit about what's going on right now. So baseball's on a hiatus, like much of the world, and you're here starting your career with the Orioles, your time with the Orioles, and the hiatus. So I know you're doing something pretty cool with index cards and research to try and familiarize yourself with the players, since you can't really get to know them in person. What's that about?
So that's always been my learning style since I was a kid. And it's funny because my mom was a teacher. So we were always taught that every kid has a different way of learning that clicks with them. But obviously, you know, one of the more popular ways and tangible ways is flashcards. And so for me, that was something I've stuck to for a long time. It's the first time I will say that I've ever used it with a team. But I was kind of at that point where I was like, you know, I want to be able to be ready and to show up and to see a guy and immediately just have stuff down. So I pulled out our player media guide, and of course those are alphabetized, but the front of the flashcard is just their jersey number. And the back is, you know, name, age, height, birthday, you know, lefty, whatever their specialty may be, and obviously their position. But it also has notes on how 2019 went for them, you know, how spring training had been going for them, their wife's name, their kids' names, if it mentions a special pet or a charity that they're a part of. So the background that kind of fills them out and makes them a whole person too. I haven't finished making them yet. I got as far as the M's in last names last night before I called it a break, but I just kind of stopped myself and said, you know, I've focused on some other things that I wanted to develop in this off time, but I really need to give that 110% right now. And it was just kind of a matter of sitting down. I got lucky that I found a stack of, you know, blank flashcards in my childhood desk and started putting them together. So that way, you know, I see 45 on the field and, oh, that's this guy, you know, and oh, 21, that's Hunter Harvey, and rolling like that. But yeah, you gotta be at the top of it. And just because there's no baseball right now, you don't want to get caught resting on your laurels.
Yeah, we're all clamoring for baseball, and I think one of the things that's interesting in particular about baseball is that the way baseball content is delivered is really evolving. And I think your role with the Orioles and MASN in many ways speaks not only to your talents but to that evolution that we're seeing and the multifaceted nature of it. So the Orioles and MASN hire you to do some TV work, to do some radio work. You're doing some stuff on social media, which we'll talk about, but you're also going to do some play-by-play in the radio. You're going to do some sideline reporting. How did that all come together, and how are you going to juggle it all and navigate the differences and the nuances between them?
So I've done juggling a little bit with those roles in the past. It's just different that it's all for one team. Last year in Salem, there were several times where I would be with the team and I'd have to fly out of whatever city we were in because I had a previously existing obligation to do sideline reporting, usually for another sport. And that was lucky when I got hired and I told our GM, you know, hey, by the way, I know this is a late hire, but I already have these commitments. If I need to drop them, I will. But if I can keep them, great. And Alan Lawrence was just always good about, you know, he wants the best for every one of his staff. He's like, that's huge exposure for you. Like, don't ever even think about dropping that. And that was great when the football package was brought to me. And he was like, oh my gosh, no, that's amazing. Like, we'll cover it. Don't worry about it. We'll figure out a way to make it work. So it's a little easier in that I'm not having to like, you know, bus to flight to this, to that. I get to just kind of stay with the same team. And, you know, it's either I'm walking upstairs to the booth or I'm walking downstairs to the dugout. But when we flew in and met with each other, I had kind of told them, you know, I've really come to love, because of minor league baseball, that I've done a little bit of everything. I really like that I came in with a sideline background and found myself in the booth and found a way to marry those two. And at the same time, having days of being the on-field host, and you're having to yell and get the fans riled up when there's 10 of them in the stands and throw t-shirts. Like, every little piece of it is so unique. And I love this game so much. So any way that I could give to that especially if it's adding value for their team and what they're looking for content wise, I'm here for it. I've worn enough hats for this point. Why not keep it going, especially if it makes me of more of an asset? And so initially, I didn't know if it was going to be an immediate yes or no. I got back on the plane and flew back to Atlanta, and I was like, well, I think they liked me. I don't know. And then when they started talking and said, we'd be really interested in bringing you on board, but we kind of see you doing some digital, doing some sidelines for TV, doing some play-by-play for radio. I thought, okay, well, I've gone through big league interviews before. Maybe I'll get like 40, 50 games, and then I'm probably going to have to figure out how to pay my rent and everything else, but it's a big league shot, so let's take it. And then my contract actually came in, and I found out just how much they believed in me. And having me involved in almost every single game, which is a little daunting. You look at the schedule and you roll out the 162 and you see your name just going down the line. But it was touching, and it was really awesome to know, I haven't been doing this because I blindly believe in myself. There's other people who believe in what I'm doing, and they see why I'm doing it, and they want me to be a part of that family. So there was almost no doubt that I wanted to say yes, yeah, you take the time to think it over and negotiate. But I knew ultimately at the end of the day, I need to start buying some orange and black. The reality did set in afterwards of, oh crap, I haven't been in this organization. I don't know these guys. And now I have to be able to produce on two different levels for them. And I'm honestly, as much as the black and white of play-by-play, yes, I know that I have ways to grow and to get better. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, those kind of stay the same, if that makes sense. What those building blocks are because they're the same building blocks you've already had. They just get a little harder every time. Versus sidelines, it's, okay, now I really have to know these guys, and they have to trust me, and I have to be able to understand the game to a different depth and also what they're trying to do. And got really lucky that there was a lot of footage of other reporters who I really respect online to start kind of nitpicking, where was the team in this week when they had this interview in Milwaukee? Are they on a losing streak? Are they in a slump? Are they doing well? And then seeing how that's handled, what are the tough post-game questions that they ask? Because that's another thing too, is we've been afforded the chance to be realistic. We're not supposed to just cherry pick and wipe it all under the rug and be like, it's great, we're 0-20, it's fine, don't pay attention to it. No, they expect us to be able to ask, about the development. Where are we going? What are the bright spots right now? So just learning those little unique aspects that again tie into both of those roles. It's a challenge, and I can't speak fully to it yet because I haven't gotten to meet that challenge, but I'm excited for it. And the digital stuff it almost comes naturally because it's such a more laid back setting, and it's just a chance to have fun. And that's where I really feel like you get that further step connection with fans.
Melanie, we for all of us at Everybody Pulls the Tarp, we can't wait to see you back in action, to see baseball back in action, and see what you accomplish next. It's been so enlightening and so much fun to sit down and talk with you, Melanie. Congratulations on all the success, on all the history that you've made so far, and we're all rooting for you to see what's next. We sure can't wait to see what's coming next.
Thank you. I can't wait for some baseball at this point.
Me too. I as a baseball fan, I can't wait. I'm itching every day to see the guys back on the field.
There we go. I'm about it. We'll get it back for you as soon as we can.
I can't wait. Well, Melanie, thank you for joining us on Everybody Pulls the Tarp. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.